Hey everybody, this is Rydo and I wanted to spotlight Super Auto Pets. For full disclosure, I have already played this game on my cell phone and played it for a few days and totally um, have already uninstalled it. And I'll get to the reasons why as we go through this. But one of the major reasons we can talk about right now is that Super Auto Pets is not quite an idle game. It's not quite a clicker, um, but it's not quite enough of a game that you really would want to play for a long time. It also is obviously designed to scoop in people's email. Um, yes, I guess since it is a mobile game, you could have some crossplay and statistics on the cell phone version versus the Steam version, which is what we're looking at. But let's go ahead and just turn this down to about 50. Um, and usernames I don't think are real in the game. It is kind of ridiculous that it is constantly trying to get your email. And not just that it pops up here like this. This would be frankly a little insulting to as the second thing you see. Like first thing you see is this big screen about the privacy policy. Second thing is give us your email and register and password and log in. Or you can click play as guest. Now that would be fine if that is it, and then you're just making an anonymous account. But that's not it. After practically every game, it asks you to upgrade your account. Not that it costs money as far as I can tell to upgrade your account, but it asks you again to put in an email and a password. And it is just really, really hard to justify giving a separate email and password, particularly on Steam, since Steam is already giving away in which there is a relationship being established between the game developer and the game player through Steam, through user Steam account information. So they're just asking for a better way to directly contact you to potentially spam you. And who's to say they don't spam you? I don't know. I never gave them the password. Uh, I'm not gonna be pedantic and complain about there being like email feedback links or Twitter links or Discord links. Uh, it is a little weird that this game is labeled as a beta because it doesn't feel like it really is a game that's going to have too much more that they will add to it, although it definitely needs more to keep people playing. The thing that really kills me though is you have these internal achievements which are not integrated into Steam, so you don't have Steam achievements for this. And each achievement is to get each of these pets to a level 3, which at some point, if you were going to expand on this game, you would think they might add a level 4 or 5, but you can't really do that because there's not enough time. You only have a certain number of battles you can have. At most, I imagine you could only have, probably somewhere around 15 battles, 15 rounds at most if you lost the first 5 rounds and then won every single other round. You also get a ribbon if you win all of the rounds, which I was never able to actually do. And all of that is fine and good, except for half of these pets you can never play with for free. You have to come over here and you would have to buy this expansion pack to play things like the beetle, the bluebird, the ladybug. They just will not show up. The bat, the dromedary. The fact that there is a dromedary is weird because there's already a camel. You would think that maybe there was even a weird system where making a combination of camel to level 3 would unlock the dromedary after a while, or leveling up the camel 10 times would unlock the dromedary, or leveling up the camel and some other pet would unlock the dromedary, but no. It's just 100% you have to pay. Notice again, really a vessel just to upgrade that guest account, to buy things. I don't think there really is a way to buy points directly. But then you have some ridiculous hats here. All of them, in my opinion, look awful because they just get kind of cropped on top of the pets and visually mess with your actual ability to identify what pets you're fighting against. And then you have some backgrounds, some of which you can buy or spend points on, some of which you have to buy, and some of which you only spend points on. But the amount of points they're asking is also kind of a ridiculous amount. You'd have to obsessively play this game for a fairly long time. There is a versus mode where you could have private encounters, which doesn't mean much really. It's just the same as arena mode. And then there's one single option in which you could play against all packs versus playing against your own pack, which I think you'd be at a particular disadvantage if you played against all packs, because I suspect that if you looked at all the stats and all the abilities in this second pack, the extra characters that get added are probably better than the default standard pack. And if this really is a beta, it is pretty unacceptable to have an expansion pack already out for something that you're calling version 0.17.2-64 beta. That's a little too greedy for what this game is, because this game is really, really simple. There's a little bit of complication to it and strategy to it, but the strategy, as far as I could figure, boils down to doing the same thing every single time and getting fairly lucky and getting momentum. Here, this is just the same settings, maybe a few different settings. The name auto picker I would recommend turning on because it's kind of a silly extra thing they're gonna have to do. So you're gonna buy a pet. A pet always costs 3 gold. As far as I can tell, there's no pets that reduce the cost. The dice with 1 pip above them says this is a 1 level, 1 tier, tier 1 character. So as you go through rounds, which this is the number of victories in the entire run you can get is 10, but then you can also lose a few times, so that's where you get up to potentially 15 rounds, I would guess. So you almost always want to buy the horse. You almost never will follow the tutorial want to buy a 1 tier food. There are a lot of things here you can buy that aren't technically food, or somewhat like food but not really. This also costs 3. And then what you would want to do right now with this starting roll is actually buy this first and then re-roll, because you can't afford this. But you could freeze this and spend 3 in the next round. You always start with 10 coins unless you have a swan, which then increases the amount of coins, but the swan has to be in your team. It's not a particularly bad thought to freeze this one, since this one has an effect, as all of these characters do, is they have some kind of effect that does something. The horse, when something is summoned, it is given +1 attack, which means this one was summoned, so this one gave it +1 attack for the next round. That stops being the case in the round after the next round, but there are ways to have other characters that are consistently summoned each round. When you reroll, you get 3 new characters, and eventually, as you level up, you'll get more spots, up to I think about 6 spots for different characters. But with 0 coins, there's really nothing you can do here. The best thing you would want to do is this, and possibly this, freezing these, because in between this turn setup and the next run, you will roll again. I wouldn't have used the apple to give this guy +1/+1, which is a permanent upgrade. Though I would have brought in the fish and had a third character. Most of these battles, well, not most, but more often than you would really like, a lot of these battles end just because somebody has one more character, which will show. So here's the name your team. And I set this to just auto because it just doesn't matter. You have to name your team every time. So you've got, I assume you couldn't just go fangirls and fanboys, the fangirls, fanboys. So you have to pick a top one and a bottom one. So yeah, let's go with the foamy fangirls as a name. Some of these names definitely do come off as a little bit lewd or a little bit silly, but it's just like a pointless addition to the game when the gameplay mechanic is so incredibly simplistic here. Then you stop playing. That's it. Like, you can click forward if you want, but you're not dragging the characters or anything. You just kick forward, and whoever has the most attack and health potentially survives the fight. Otherwise, they kill each other. So, very often you will lose and be defeated. And at the beginning, you only lose 1 heart, but you always start with 10. But eventually, as you go through a few more rounds, you start to lose 2 hearts, and then eventually it caps off at losing 3 hearts. So, that is where my guess is you could probably lose 3 or 4 times and only lose 1 heart, and then lose 2 hearts the next time, and then if you won every time after that, you'd still be fine. You might even be able to do 4 losses, losing only 1 heart, and then 1 loss, losing only 2, then 1 loss, losing 3, and then get 10 victories in a row, although that seems unlikely to really happen. And see, the thing that won it for them was just the fact that that he had more characters, because buying a character for 3 versus spending 3 gold to give another character +1/+1 is always going to be the right choice. Notice this guy is back to 2-1 where it was 3-1 in the last run. But now that I have 2 horses, I can I get double the pump up of attack. So since we are financially a little strapped, it would make a lot of sense to buy a fish and keep them separate instead of potentially putting this on top of this one and merging it, because merging it would only give it 1 bar and you need 2 bars to level up, so we just can't afford that. I can roll now, and since this is frozen, we keep that, and we can fairly quickly just highlight what each character does, because these are the first 5 characters in this pet set for tier 1 pets. It's going to be a duck that when you sell it, sometimes you'll just buy a character and then sell it back. You could sell this for 1 gold instead of, but you paid 3. but that is a way to spend 3 gold now instead of buying something else. And it makes a lot of sense when you build these teams, and how you arrange this is to not have something too important at the very back, because there's a character that eventually will attack the furthest character. There's a character that will attack everybody. There's a character that will attack one random character. Um, and you eventually would play enough to just know each of that. But you start off with the duck that, when you sell, gives pets, the shop pets. So it would be these pets plus 1 health, which is a small bump up. You have the ant that, when it faints, summons a random friend. No, it gives a random friend +2 +1. You have the fish that, when it levels up, gives all your friends, everybody here, +1 +1. If you got a +1 +1 on this and then merged it into this, it really wouldn't help boost his health in any extra amount. But when you do merge one character into another, it does tend to give it a boost in health and attack. There's a pig that you can sell for like 2 gold. The mosquito does 1 random damage to 1 enemy. And when these get leveled up, he starts to do 2 random damage. So you have to kind of level these up from level 1 to 2 to 3 to figure out what they do. I can say the fish is probably not worth getting to level 3, because it becomes fairly difficult to do it. And there is a different way, certainly, to to make pairs and level things up to kind of save some time. So just click autoplay is what almost anybody with any respect for their time would do. And see, that's a great example of that character was a 4-1, and even though it only had 1 health, it did enough damage to take out the person. And that's how I would say at least 82% of all fights go between pets, is that they will attack each other and both sides will die. And if you can just have really 1 pet that survives 1 attack, you probably have an advantage over your opponents, depending on how many rounds they've gone. Now that we're at the 3rd turn, level 2 tier 2 animals unlock. So you'll start to see these tier 2 animals with the peacock, which once per turn will gain 50% of its attack, which I don't feel like is probably that useful. And then we have an attack for 6 or more damage with the meat bone, which is a kind of high food. Or you have giving a pet +3/+3 until the end of the battle, which is not really ever worth buying. There is a pet that would give you some benefit for eating food on top of the default benefit of eating food, and at that point there might be an argument to use the cupcake, but I think that is a 3rd tier pet, so you would probably do better re-rolling. Whereas this meat bone, it's probably not a terrible thought to just buy that. That means this guy will do like 8 damage as a potential showstopper. But after that, I would just re-roll this. So that gives us the opportunity to highlight the honey, which is basically the thing you're going to use more often than anything. Is you're going to use the horse and honey combo. Eventually, if you get far enough in the game, you'll replace honey with garlic, which reduces the amount of damage you take. But that's pretty much where it's going to end. So what I'm going to do is buy this horse and level that up, and now it's a 4-3. Then I'm going to drag this horse and merge it, and that is going to make it a 5-4, and it's a level 2. So now it gives +2 when something is summoned. because I leveled up something, I now have a level 3 level 3 pet unlocked early. And you pretty much have to use that system to get any of these late tier characters, because it's practically impossible to get a tier 6, one of the creatures is a dragon, for instance. It's practically impossible to get a tier 6 dragon and level up to level 3 in the remaining number of turns that you would have. This is a good buy, so we'll buy that, and this is a good buy later, so we'll freeze that. This tier 1 is the pig that sells for 1 extra gold, so if you had nothing better, buying this and then selling it later. And then the elephant is a tier 2 that does 1 damage to the character behind you, which only works if you were to, say, try and do something like this, which actually I guess that will work, so we'll freeze that. Next round we'll merge this one into this one and then put this one on the forefront, and so every time this one tries to attack, it'll do 1 damage to this guy, which it'll give +1/+2 to this guy, buffing him up. And that's about as complicated of a strategy as you really will have in a lineup. Is a 3 character in a row strategy. Here's the swan that gives you 1 gold at the start. The sheep, when it faints, gives you 2 rams. That's pretty great. There's the bee that the honeypot summons. And then the cricket, when it faints, summons a 1/1 cricket. When you level it up, it becomes like a 2/2 cricket. And see, very often what's going to happen is you're going to either win or draw. More often than you realize, you'll draw. Now, what's weird is there's this tier 2 sleeping pill that makes a character faint, which could potentially clear off a character from the field instead of selling him. I don't know why you would do that. Or it could potentially summon the honeybee, but you don't have to get the honeybee to level 3. So that doesn't really make any sense that it exists. There are some other characters that would spawn a random thing, like the sheep. So if you were to use the sleeping pill to permanently, and it is permanently, make your sheep faint and then have 2 rams, okay, maybe there might be a scenario where that makes sense, but in most cases it actually doesn't make any sense. And that's a problem with this, is that a lot of these concepts and these effects have not really been thought through enough. Here we have a flamingo, which when it faints gives the 2 people behind it +1/+1. I think when you level it up, it then does 3, maybe even 4. And then we've already seen the peacock. The beaver, when you sell, gives 2 random friends +1 health. But what we want here is this. And fairly quickly, you're going to start re-rolling quite a lot, particularly if you are going to try to get all the achievements and have bought the expansion so you can get all the achievements done and play with the different characters. Really, there should be a system here where you get a random subset of characters every time you play, and it's going to be different each time you play instead of getting the same expansion. So every time a honeybee is summoned, which would be normally a 1/1, it becomes a 3/1, which just lets you do that massive amount of damage. Even at that, there is definitely room for failure in this in each round. It'll be very ironic if I actually succeed here and make it to 10 victories. So at turn 5, you unlock tier 3 animals, and this is when you start to potentially think about replacing things. You're now also having 4 options, and there is a potential chance of less likelihood of finding tier 1 characters if you're trying to get to level 3. Eventually, when you get to tier 5, you start having a food called chocolate that will let you gain 1 level of experience. But we are now hitting a point where we reroll, and normally I wouldn't have spent so much food. You have to be particularly careful playing the snail because nothing on the screen tells you if you lost the last roll. You have to just remember, did you lose the last battle? And if you do buy it because you lost the last battle, there's a high chance you won't see enough snails to get to a level 3 snail. Anyways, I don't even know what a level 2 does. The rabbit is the character that gives your pet friends a +1 health every time they eat a food, which would also include sleeping pills. The hedgehog does 2 damage to all, so there is an argument potentially to having this guy at the end as a suicide character. If I was to do that, I would sell it for 1, or yeah, I guess that would make sense. Let's do that. We'll sell that, so we're up to 11 coins. We'll buy that. We'll put it at the very end. That means he dies. If he dies, it does 2 damage to everybody, which would just be my opponents because all of these guys would have to already have been dead. Then you can make a backup plan by having him summon a new character after his effect activates. And then we are now at the point where it's just reroll. You reroll for hopes of finding something like the horse, which it needs 2 more horses to level up. You could buy the salad bowl to give 2 random pets +1/+1. If you had the rabbit, that would make a lot of sense. You could potentially try to sell this for 1 and get the sheep. But I think what I'll do is just freeze that and then re-roll again. Notice we have another ant we missed here. The badger, when it faints, deals attack damage to adjacent pets. And I couldn't ever figure out a scenario in which that would make sense. Again, maybe at the very end that would make sense. And then there is this concept of melon armor, where the meat bone attack does 5 more damage each time. The melon armor takes or removes 20 damage the first time. And there are some characters that do have melon armor or gain melon armor automatically, and they can be very, very difficult to defeat. So you would definitely want to keep an eye out for not the turtle, but some of the other characters that use melon armor. Eventually you do get, I believe it's a 4th tier melon food that you can just give melon armor to any character. And you'll start to notice as you get later in these rounds that a lot of these characters seem to have what is a ridiculously high amount of health. And that is where you'll just start losing completely. So my strategy of doing 2 damage there and then summoning a bee, not really fixing things. And at this point, even on the 5th turn, you're taking 3 damage, which means more than likely we've got 2 more rounds and we're going to then lose. There's just a little bit of hope. This has been re-rolled. The shrimp will give a random friend +1 health. There's just a little bit of hope that we can find things that would let us level up things. But there's a high chance we'll just get everything to potentially level 2 and no further. if we could find um, if we could find a fish and give everything +1/+1, that might be helpful, but it's not particularly that helpful. The spider is a pretty good tier 2 item because he summons a level 1 tier 3 item as a 2/2. So there might be an argument to buy this and then put a sleeping pill on that to get something faster or quicker. Whereas the rat summons a 1/1 dirty rat in front, up front for your opponent, which could never figure out a reason why that would be a good thing. And I don't think I'm that dumb that there should be some reason I don't understand why a character would exist. It just seems like some of these pets are just poorly thought out or badly designed. Now, notice this guy has the garlic to take 2 less damage each attack. We might win here. It's gonna be close. No, we're gonna lose. What's funny is you don't really gain momentum or lose momentum. Each round is kind of its own separate thing. Like, you always start with 10 coins. You don't get extra coins for winning, which is the thing you would assume would happen. So it's really a case of just playing the best you can and then leaving it, just realizing that most of this is random. Oddly, this could be a much more automated type of game if that's what they were going to go for. And potentially you would just be able to, like, pick your starting team and watch them fight almost as an idle game forever. So now it's turn 7. Tier 4 characters have been unlocked, although take note, there are no tier 4 characters being shown. Which, at that point, I think it's time to unfreeze this, so we open up a spot. We now have a tier 5, which normally I would just take this tier 5 seal and then give him this. That's the way you would try to win here going forward. But I want to get to level 3. Yeah. Because this is a level 2, you can sell it for 2, but remember, you've spent 9 gold to get to a level 2. Sell that. Put that here. Put that there. And giving 2 characters +1/+1 for 3 really wouldn't be terrible, just to drag that back to that, but let's not do that. Instead, we will roll and freeze this one. Here is a pair that gives a pet +2/+2, which you could do that certainly, so we'll freeze that as an option. And then we have a worm that when it specifically eats a shop food, it gains +1/+1. And then you have the ox. If the friend ahead of him faints, he gains the melon armor, take 20 less damage. There is actually an effect that negates all damage one time, but each time a friend ahead of him faints, he'll gain melon armor and +2 attack, which means if he was in second place here, this guy attacks, he would get melon armor +2. When this guy dies, well, he would get melon armor +2, but then it would summon the bee, and then when the bee died, he'd get melon armor a second time and another +2 attack, which isn't really even that useful because there's no real way, as far as I could figure, in which he would be able to attack after the seal had died and then have the honeybee appear in front of him and attack again. We have a penguin, which at the end of your turn, which is when you click this, it gives the other two level 2 and 3 friends +1/+1, which would just be that character. So this is a more late game strategy. The squirrel discounts the shop food by 1 gold. So instead of being 3, it would be 2. And we've talked about everything else. And then the beaver gives 2 random friends +1 health. The giraffe gives the friend ahead of you +1/+1 at the end of the turn. The rooster summons a chicken with 1 health and half the attack of this character, which would be 3 by default, which is not much. And I think we've already covered the salad bowl. Like, you would have to buff this up so it has a lot of attack, and then it potentially would be better than using the horse. And eventually the horse does kind of stop being the thing you want. I believe it's a turkey or chicken that does a better job because it gives +2 +2 attack +2 health for every summoned character. So if we see the chicken, normally you would want to replace that and remove it. Normally, though, you wouldn't have enough room to have both the chicken and the horse. And as you get to know these characters, it becomes fairly easy to figure out. The parrot copies whatever this guy does in front of him at a level 1. So the level 1 dolphin deals 5 damage to the lowest health enemy. Skunk reduces the highest health enemy by 33%. So the parrot is kind of the perfect character to copy something you already have that's pretty good. Unfortunately, you don't see the parrot often enough for that, and it feels like there would need to be some room for improvement. And so that's game over at turn 7 with 3 victories. And we didn't get a single thing to level 3, even playing with a decent strategy. And 3 gets you 10. 1 would have gotten you 3, 2 would have gotten you 6. 3 trophies get you 10. If you got all 10, I suspect you'd get about 100 points. And so, as I said, once again, it wants you to enter an email, pick a username, enter the email again. They really want to make sure they got that email and enter a password. You don't have to enter the password twice. It's fine if you mistype that, but you better be sure to type in that email. Right. So we have 10 points. Let's once again now point out what points can buy. They can't buy you the expansion pack with the other characters, many of which are duplicates anyways of the original characters, but several of which are exclusive. They can buy you some hats, but not the early adopter hat. But you would need 100 points to get the lowest tier hats, and you would really have to pick at the beginning which hat do you want. So most players who are going to get obsessive about this game will go for the golden poop hat for 5,000 points and only buy that one. Ideally, that's what you would want to do, is just save up 5,000 through playing a lot of super auto pets and getting all of this would be a lot of points and a lot of gameplay. Or you can't spend points for the hot desert, but you could spend 5,000 points for Lake Mountain and Scary Forest. And all these are backgrounds. I don't even think there's different music around them. So a massive difference between the cost for Underground Cave and Scary Forest, with visually there being really no difference here at all. it's a very minimal difference. It's not no difference. And because we didn't get anything to level 3, we didn't complete all of this. After playing for about 4 or 5 days of this on my cell phone, I had 18 out of 80. And once I started to realize that I was never getting the Tyrannosaurus, I was never getting the tropical fish, I don't think I was ever getting the tabby cat, because those are all in the expansion. That's the point where I realized, oh, there's no way to actually free to play get all of these in-game achievements, which makes it very unmotivating to want to actually play the game, whereas achievements are specifically designed to be motivating to play the game. I thought I turned on the auto name picker. Again, wet, nasty, rude, masseuses. Let's go with the wet masseuses. Kind of oddly age inappropriate for the rest of the game, some of these names, and you see them. These are other random people's profiles that we're playing against, real people theoretically. And if you have the exact same setup, obviously you're going to fight against, you're going to draw. Alright. This is where it's going to start to get down to trying to figure out what you want to keep and what you don't want to keep. And ideally, oops, hopefully that didn't mess things up. I just hit my mouse and activated the magnifier. Let's see. Hopefully this isn't messing up the recording. Hit the start menu, close the magnifying app. There we go. Yeah. I have TVs that I'm looking at from 10 feet away, which works most of the time, but not all the time as far as being able to actually read the text. So I have a special buttons on the side of my mouse mapped to special programs I made, to little scripts to bring up the magnifier mode in Windows and zoom in. But that creates a weird scenario, certainly for recording, and it's not for recording. Okay. So, where it kind of boils down to is you want to be able to do this. You want to be able to say, I'm going to have something ready to go and ready to level up to the next level. And in this case, that's going to create a weird scenario where I need to buy something like that first, because I don't want to level up 2 crickets when I'm going to merge them together. I may very well sell this guy in the next turn, in the next round, but at least I'll get an extra coin. It's worth pointing out, though, if you have extra coins and you don't spend them, they don't stay around for the next round, which also feels like a weird game mechanic decision. It would make more sense that your coins do stay around and you can build up a stockpile. But yeah, no such luck. The only way you can build up a stockpile, notice we have now 11, is to save. It is also noticeably weird that you are not really needing to pay much attention to the. We'll just take the dodo. Yeah, you don't really need to pay much attention to the base attacks and health of characters, because their attacks and health are so wild in the first place that it just doesn't become a factor. Like, it's so easy to go from a 2-2 to a 3-3. So the kangaroo here attacks. Every time somebody ahead of him attacks, he gains some attack, which is going to buff him up. Plus, this guy could give his attack to somebody ahead, which might be better to buff that guy up. And let's see, I guess we'll go ahead and just give that a honey pot. And then we'll just go ahead and freeze that. And then start rolling. And then freeze that. And freeze that. And then roll again. And then in the turn. It would make sense if every now and then something rolled. And this is a great point to point out how the hats are just kind of generically placed on top of people, and they just visually mess with what the appearance is. The backgrounds you buy only show the background on half of the screen, at least when you're playing the default character or the default background, which visually that doesn't look very good. If you buy a background in any game, I think you should see the background you bought all the way through and let the other player see the background they picked or purchased. It's an odd way of not really satisfying people. Again, now would be a terrible time to buy the snail. Level that up. This one will give you +2/+2 when it knocks something out, which means it will buff up more. So now it's the time to potentially be more crazy and sell things and bring things back. It is also time to potentially consider using garlic, which is a level tier 3 thing, instead of the honey pot. Garlic on the hippo will be much more beneficial in the long run. But at a certain point here, you can't just flippantly cycle in and out of characters. You have to be very careful about it, otherwise you'll never have a characters that are buffed up enough. There's a fairly consistent strategy that most people play in which they put a very strong character up front and weaker characters in the back, and sometimes a strong character at the back to wrap things up. So this guy just got melon armor, so he does no damage. The next attack reduced by 2. So that was more of a struggle for victory than it would have seemed like it would have been. Alright, let me go ahead and buff that up. The whale is an interesting character because it swallows the friend of ahead of it. So it could swallow this and then cause it to summon a cricket, which, by the way, this guy is in the wrong place. He should be here because when he dies, he should summon a cricket and the butterfly at the same time. I mean, the honeybee at the same time. And there's not enough room there for him to do that. Which also means that should probably be there. There is a deer, and when the deer gets faints, it summons a buzz, and the buzz has an effect called spicy or something that does 2 damage, damage to the person in front of it and the damage to the person behind the person in front of it. And eventually you get like a tier 5 chili pepper that lets you give that ability to any character. That is one case where if you had the deer here and then the whale in front of it, it would eat the deer, summon the bus because the deer technically fainted, have the bus fight and do a lot of damage, and then when the bus disappeared, they would fight the whale, and then when the whale disappears and faints, uh, releasing it as a level 1 character. So there is definitely room for an interesting combo there. I definitely see some interesting combos as I have played this, but a lot of things just feel like filler. I can't say I hate the pet thought. This looks very kid friendly. The names feel very unkid friendly, and like they probably should get rid of that. It does feel like there should be some roguelite elements here where you would play enough and eventually that would give you the ability to start with more coins or level up your characters. Like if you leveled up a character, say 10 times to level 3, then that should potentially have it always start at level 2, at least in a solo player mode that just doesn't exist at the moment. It wouldn't be a terrible idea to give this to this guy and keep him buffed up. So we'll do that. And it's either going to be summon another honeypot. You would think there would be an achievement for having each character have an effect, or 5 characters with the honeypots or something like that. There's nothing like that. And eventually I might very well replace all these honeypots with garlics and potentially even think about getting rid of the horse for something that does something different. There is a maximum that is not told to you. You can have 50 health and 50 attack. After that point, you will no longer gain any more. It is weird that the game does not tell you that. You would think that would be important information, but it doesn't. We may have a draw here. Nope, I lucked out. This canned food is interesting in that you could buy it and it would give the current pets here and all future pets +2/+1, which if you don't like your current setup and you're planning on replacing everything would make some sense. But since most of the time you're going to have in the back of your mind a desire to get everything up to level 3 until you have all the achievements where you have everything up to level 3, you really wouldn't want to go with that concept. Here's where we would have a tough decision. We could potentially freeze this and think about it, and then we need to start re-rolling. And the game does kind of at this point become just about re-rolling over and over and over again. It would be fairly insane if you needed to find a bunch of sleeping pills to make each one of these faint just to get the honeybee up to level 3. because to get to level 3 you need 6 characters. And that's just not likely to happen. Although there probably should be an achievement around doing something like that. So as you get into the later rounds, you stop playing the game as much. Level 8 chicken. So are we going to be able to pull this around? Maybe, maybe not. See, once I put the cricket in the right place, I was summoning both of them. I very possibly failed one extra round that I didn't need to fail. But you can easily just be outplayed by the luck of the draw. Like, undoubtedly, there are scenarios where you will not win no matter what. And this is about the top tier. This bunches up with this, and in fact, if you make a level 3, it will put an animal in this spot, and maybe, I don't know if it actually bumps the food or just replaces the food. It probably just replaces it. And even on cell phones, there is always a lot of gap here on the side where this could have gotten longer, and it wouldn't make a terrible decision if, as you approach the 7th turn, 8th turn, they give you another spot for another character, and or had a mode in which you could get another spot for another character and just have a long chain. But then you would need to speed up the animations quite a bit. This sushi 5 tier is pretty decent, giving your pets plus 3 random pets plus 1+1. So if you're trying to win, you would play this. If you're trying to get to level 3, you would potentially skip it. And it just has a check mark when you have something that affects multiple characters. You definitely, though, are going to start running into more and more issues, and it's probably time to unfreeze the garlic in favor of looking for chocolate. But yeah, here's the chili, which gives the character a splash attack. So I'll freeze that and think about using that. I'll freeze this so we can get at least one character up to level 3. Potentially it might make sense to sell this guy and replace him with this, which just starts with more attack and more health. But then if you want to get the fish to level 3, you have to do it at least once. So you have to compromise yourself every time you play, at least the first time you play a character, and probably the first 10 or more times you play a character until you actually can survive long enough to make it to level 3. This bison gains +2/+2 if you have a level 3 character. I don't think they actually did have a level 3 character, though. It's going to be very hard, though, to defeat this guy. He's just going to be very overpowered. So we can only hope that we're not going to lose our last 3 hearts, but I don't know where we are, which is kind of odd. They could be telling you right now how many hearts you have, but they hide it in the next screen, whereas more logically the final screen should just be a few bits of text fading in after you see this screen, so it's more connected. The whole kind of fade it out to the darkness and then show it on top like this is a little unnecessary. You don't need to fade it out. You should just maybe get rid of the animals. But yeah, you could definitely have had the hearts and the victories in a smaller form factor depicted in the top left there. Alright, so we'll get the cricket to level 3, which at level 3, he summons a 3/3 cricket. That also, because we leveled something up, gave us the cat, where food with health and attack effects are doubled. We can level up this guy. And then we need to decide whether we want to do splash damage. And I think we probably do. And then roll. And we'll freeze this again and probably give this guy splash damage. And just hope we can win this next round. Otherwise, all we will have accomplished in this run is getting the cricket to level 3. Which means you don't have to play the cricket ever again. But the cricket's decent, so there's not really a reason for that. His splash damage did kill the character behind, but notice that this character also has splash damage, and it doesn't really matter because this guy is going to be such a hassle. We probably aren't going to get past the dirty rat. So we've more than likely lost. Here is the friend ahead repeats their ability as if they were level 1, which works very good with the deer, which summons a 5/5 bus. And so we got 10 for 3 trophies. We got 15 for 4 trophies. And then they ask for your email again. And that's it. Like, really, that is all there is to see about Super Auto Pets. So, there are ideas here, an art style here. People like pets, certainly. But it's not a polished experience. It's not something that you really would want to come back to. It's something I imagine you might play on your phone if you're stuck on a bus or in the toilet or something. But even that, I found it, even in those scenarios, I found it very unsatisfactory as an idea, because it gets very repetitive very fast, and there's just no variety. You always start at the same place with the same 5 tier 1 characters, and there's just a lot of annoyance where it asks for an email, and there's no way to just come in here and say, hey, stop asking for the emails. You can turn off usernames, but there's really no reason why that should exist. And I imagine that turns off usernames, not team names. You could fast forward things a little bit. But yeah, there's nothing here as far as a way to stop it asking about the email. And even just jumping into arena mode or versus mode takes probably 1 click too many. But yeah, it's a shame, but this also kind of indicates where a lot of mobile games are still these days, after a very long time in which mobile games and Android and iOS have been established as a thing, is that most mobile games, even if they are ported to Steam, and we are starting to see a lot more of them ported to Steam, and I think that is generally a good idea, but they should probably put a little bit more effort into porting them to Steam. I don't believe there's any controller support, for instance. No, I just touched my controller and nothing happened. Where this might feel like a slightly better experience if I weren't having to use the mouse and keyboard to control and make selections. But yeah, most mobile games, even from major developers, are these half-hearted concepts. There's just no game hook to it. You really would have to be very OCD and very obsessive, and as somebody who thinks of themselves as slightly OCD and obsessive when they do play video games, even I cannot get hooked into super auto pets for more than a few days. Anyways, that's going to be it for this spotlight. I figured I'd show it off since I had already played the game. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. If you want to check out my playlist tab on my YouTube page, I have a playlist for every game I've ever covered, which there's a lot of them. And then if you want to support me even further, which would be greatly appreciated, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wish list or a gift card. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.